just dive straight into this. If you look around, the entire world right now is in what you could honestly call a war mood. And because of that, the global arms manufacturing sector, it is seeing literally unprecedented profits. Today, we're unpacking the latest SIPRI report. This is the report that tracks exactly how much money nations are pouring into their defense budgets and military upgrades for 2025. It's a genuinely fascinating look at global priorities. And in this explainer, we're going to break down the heavyweights, some really surprising shifts, and a very specific kind of wild paradox facing India. $2,887 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the total global defense spending projected for 2025. When you hear a number like that, it instantly hooks you, right? It perfectly captures the sheer scale of the global arms race we're seeing and just how intensely nations are fortifying their borders and modernizing their forces right now.
So, to make sense of that massive figure, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the global war mood. Then, we'll break down the top 4 defense spenders. After that, we'll explore India's defense budget paradox, look at where India is actually buying its weapons, and finally, check in on where Pakistan stands.
Okay, moving right along to Section 1, the global war mood, a chain of crises leading to a massive spending boom.
The world has just been on edge since 2020. The pandemic was immediately followed by the Gawan clash between India and China. Then in 2022, Russia attacked Ukraine, which severely disrupted global food supply chains, hitting nations in Africa especially hard. And then by 2023, Hamas attacked Israel, sparking these tensions that eventually pulled in the US and Iran, completely disrupting global energy and natural gas supply chains. So, along with other ongoing conflicts and recent regional border operations like Operation Sindhur, this constant state of friction has just sent the demand for weapons absolutely skyrocketing.
And here is the really critical context. The SIPRI report notes a roughly 3% increase in global spending from 2024 to 2025. Now, 3% sounds tiny, right? But that 3% increase alone equals roughly $90 billion. To put that into perspective for you, that single year-over-year increase globally is essentially equal to India's entire annual defense budget. That is how aggressively the global war chest is expanding right now.
Let's shift gears to Section 2. Top 4 defense spenders, the global heavyweights.
These are the undeniable titans of defense spending. The USA remains completely unmatched at $954 billion. China is sitting in second place with $336 billion, and Russia is in third, with a newly increased budget of $190 billion.
So the really crucial point here is why they're spending this much. For the US, well, it's about maintaining a massive global footprint. They're funding global commands like CENTCOM, military bases all over the world, and providing massive defense aid to places like Israel and Ukraine. Interestingly, a lot of this US spending actually relies on importing parts from across the globe. Meanwhile, China bumped its budget up by 7.4% to fuel its ambitions for global leadership, really asserting its presence in places like the South China Sea and Taiwan. And then there's Russia. Deeply engaged in an active war, they had to bump their budget up from $149 billion to $190 billion. And because of Western sanctions, Russia is now actively having to source parts from China and buying missiles and drones from North Korea and Iran.
But hold on, because here is a pretty massive surprise. $114 billion. This number belongs to the country that just bumped India to take the number 4 spot on the list.
That country is Germany. Following the invasion of Ukraine, Germany went through a massive, totally historic policy shift. Since World War II, they had strictly limited their military focus, but now they've increased their defense budget by a staggering 24%, jumping from $90 straight up to $114 billion. They are heavily investing in military technology with the clear goal of becoming a major global arms exporter.
Now this reshuffling brings us to Section 3, India's defense budget paradox, the 5th spot catch.
So India's total defense budget is roughly $92 billion. But there's a massive catch here. Despite being the 5th largest spender globally, over 72% of that budget, we're talking over 5 lakh crore rupees, is consumed entirely by salaries and pensions. That leaves only a fraction, about 2.1 lakh crore rupees, for the actual procurement of weapons and technological innovation. It's a real paradox. And the thing is, India has an incredibly urgent shopping list to fulfill with that much smaller slice of the pie. Faced with intense regional pressures and following recent border skirmishes like Operation Sindhur, the Indian military urgently needs to procure and upgrade fighter jets, transport planes, submarines, warships, drones, missiles, helicopters, the whole shebang. It is a tremendous and frankly very difficult balancing act between maintaining personnel and modernizing hardware.
Because domestic innovation takes massive, long-term capital, this paradox leads us straight into Section 4, India's weapon import sources, finding new partners.
While India is only the fifth largest overall spender, it is actually the second largest weapon importer in the entire world. Ukraine currently sits at number 1, accounting for 9.2% of global imports because of its active war. But India is right behind it, holding a massive 8.2% share of the global arms import market, followed by Saudi Arabia at 6.8%.
Now, you might be wondering, where are all those imports actually coming from? Historically, India relied on Russia for a whopping 70% of its arms imports. But today, that dynamic is shifting dramatically. That reliance has dropped way down to 40%. Now, India still procures major systems from Russia, like the S-400 defense systems and AK rifles, but the overall landscape is fundamentally changing.
To keep up with regional threats and modernize its forces, India is actively seeking out new defense partners. They're now buying advanced hardware from France, the USA, and Israel. And, tying it all back to our new number 4 global spender, India recently signed a major new submarine contract with Germany. This is a perfect example of India's strategic push for diversification.
All right, let's bring this global story back to the local neighborhood. Section 5, where Pakistan stands. Rank 31 in SIPRI. Out of the 40 countries tracked in this latest SIPRI report, Pakistan ranks 31st. They're operating with an annual defense budget of approximately $11.9 billion.
What's really notable to look at here is Pakistan's sourcing strategy. A significant portion of their military arsenal relies heavily on free aid, international loans, and military imports, which is often older or surplus stock provided by China. Like others, they are also looking to increase their hardware capabilities in response to these ongoing regional tensions.
Which ultimately brings us to the big question: how will India balance towering pension costs with the urgent need to out-innovate its neighbors? It's a complex strategic puzzle, and honestly, how it's solved is going to define the region's geopolitical future. I hope this explainer gave you a clear, structured look into the global defense landscape and the really unique challenges facing these nations. Thanks for joining us, keep analyzing, and we'll see you next time.